Now there's new footage that has been released of the moments after high schooler Carmelo Anthony fatally stabbed Austin Metcalf at a Texas track meet in April of 2025. Take a look.
Okay. Not alleged. Okay.
He put his hands on me. I told him not to. He put his hands on me.
He was sentenced to 35 years in prison, which he's appealing. The case has a lot of people divided. Some people believe that race was a factor in the trial because there were no black jurors. They were all the three black jurors that were there were educators, and they were released.
They were struck.
They were struck for that. And some folks think, no, he got a fair trial. But is this a jury of his peers?
I don't think so. And you know, this has been an issue for such a long time in the judicial system where prosecutors use what are called, Batson challenges. And they
Explain what that is.
It's a challenge that is used to strike a juror, generally a juror of color, for a race-neutral reason.
Right.
Because you're supposed to have a jury of your peers, and you're not supposed to just strike someone because they're black. And in this case, they gave the reasoning that they're educators, and this happened, these were high school students, and this happened at a school track meet, so they couldn't be impartial because of that. I don't think that's an appropriate reason.
They might be the best ones, too.
Yeah, I don't think it's an appropriate reason to strike black jurors, especially when it's a young black teenager on trial, and especially when that particular area is made up of 10% of an African-American community. So I don't think he got a jury of his peers. So I think on appeal, there is a legitimate thing, a legitimate reason.
So backtracking, what she said as far as jury of your peers, and I had to somewhat educate myself on this. A jury of your peers doesn't necessarily mean people that look exactly like you per se. More so people that are in your community, right? Let's say, just give an example here, a jury of not Austin Metcalf, but Carmelo Anthony's peers would have been people directly like in his community. Maybe people that have gone to that school before, things of that nature, not necessarily black people, although, yeah, sure, that would have been a jury of his peers on a racial tone, but it doesn't necessarily mean just because the jury wasn't, black, it's not a jury of his peers, although it doesn't seem as if any of the people that were picked as jurors were actually of his peers. Another thing is there was a lawyer that was dealing with the other situation with the young black man that got shot but outside of the gas station. Asian man who shot him. And I'm only really throwing these things out here just so people know the race thing. I'm not really too big in throwing out race stuff, but just for the context of the video. In that situation, that lawyer for that Asian man was saying that the reason why you'll have a situation where you'll deal with, let's say, a juror not being picked that's an educator is because in situations like that, because they are educators, they're teachers, they're around children, they might have a bleeding heart, so to speak, for the person that they potentially might be listening to. In that case, Carmelo Anthony would have been that. So when you're dealing with situations like that, both sides are going to be picking who they want to be jurors, who they don't want to be jurors. And do I think race played a part in this? 1,000%. On both ends, race played a part. But the educator thing definitely was a factor as well. The prosecutors didn't want that. And I mean, it's understandable. No matter what you think, just from a strategic standpoint, it just wouldn't have been good for them. So That's how that is.
I also think we have to look at self-defense here because there seems to be two systems of justice at play in this country. And there have been for a very long time. I was part of the system, so I understand that, and I believe that to be true. In this case, this young man, you heard him say, he put his hands on me, and I told him not to. This, the kid that died, and I have so much empathy for him and his family's loss. That kid was 200 pounds. This kid was 130 pounds. And so, and the other kid was also taller than he is. He was the only black kid under the tent. And the victim here had his twin brother with him, who was also a very large person. If you don't fear for your life, if you weigh 130 pounds, I weigh 130 pounds. Facing somebody that's 200 pounds, I would be terrified of that. So I don't understand why self-defense was rejected by this jury.
I agree with a lot of what you're saying, especially the jury representation. That's what stood out to me. And we know there's plenty of evidence that there's sentencing disparity with people of color. The one thing to me, though, is what is the fair sentence when you take a life? And this is what I'm struggling with because this is a tragedy across the board. A 17-year-old is dead. A 17-year-old's going to likely spend 30.
Also to add the whole thing where self-defense seems to be what they're focused on here. So when it comes down to this case and self-defense, yes, Austin Metcalf was definitely 100 or so pounds above Carmelo Anthony. True, taller, just an overall unit of a man in comparison. So one could fear for their safety for sure. It's just when you're thinking about the details of the situation that was released, that's on camera, that everyone can have access to, not that everyone keeps guessing and thinking that they know or what they heard, but what's actually available for people to actually see and hear from the professionals and or witnesses. There wasn't a situation where he was actually in fear for his life, truly. There was more so a situation where he was being asked to leave the tent, probably not so nicely. And I'll be the first one to say Austin Metcalf had no type of authority to put his hands on anyone. But I also have to say Carmelo Anthony wasn't justified because hands was put on him to stab somebody with a blade in their heart. There's just no justification for something like that. Like I said, if you ignore all of the noise as far as what people have heard, people jumping him, this and that, just go based on what we know right now from the professionals, from the evidence. He was pushed, shoved, hands was put on him in that type of way, and he reacted. That was it. In my opinion, based on all the evidence, it seems like it was somewhat of an overreaction based on what Austin Metcalf did. Yes, Austin Metcalf touched him. He should not have touched him. But I punch you, you stab me. A bit of overkill, if you ask me.
35 years in jail. He could appeal at 17. Yeah. I'd be curious what you think, because I wrestle with it. If it was, God forbid, anyone in my life, I would think 30 years seems about right. If they said life, I'd say that's too long for a 17-year-old. He could be rehabilitated.
Look, I think 35 years, if there is no self-defense claim, which is an absolute claim to this crime, absolute defense, I think that would be appropriate. But if you look at other cases, there was the other case where there was a young black kid who was chased by Rick Chow, a store owner, accused of taking water bottles, which he didn't take, the 4 water bottles. He chased that young boy 130 yards, which is half of a football field, and shot him in the back, claiming self-defense. And you know where he is right now? He's at home with his family because he was found not guilty.
Yeah, and there's a lot of cases like that.
If that is self-defense, if that is...
Yeah, so with Rick Chow, the Asian man I was actually mentioning earlier, if you're going to say it, say the whole thing. He actually went to jail for 3 years after that incident ended up happening. And then finally, recently, about a few weeks ago, going on a month ago, he was tried in court and then he was innocent. He also lost the business and everything, people looting, breaking things. Probably can't even be back in that area ever again. But that situation, there's a lot more things to kind of unpack with that. But it's not as simple as, oh, he just got off. No, the police officers arrested him off rip because they thought he should not have been chasing that young man. But that's a story for another video.
Self-defense. I don't understand why this isn't.
But when the system fails one time, I don't think we should then say, so then the system should fail.
But they're very similar self-defense
Sonny,
claims.
I had a question because I was wondering why the self-defense claim didn't work, and I had read that it said you have to use the same amount of force that was brought against you. So if someone pushes you and you push them back, that's self-defense?
That's not the standard because it's not only use, but attempted use.
Well, no, that's what I'm asking.
So if you felt your life was in danger and you felt he was going to do more than just push you, and you weigh 130 pounds and you're outweighed by 70 pounds,
so you can use
you know what when I looked at this case though, which to me is just sad every which way, right? There's two families that are destroyed. There's, you know, Austin Metcalf lost his life. Carmelo Anthony is going to spend at least 17 years in jail. So this is just tragic. But my question is, how did this get to this point, and where the hell were the adults?
Yeah.
These were two 17-year-olds.
Yeah.
I mean,
what I understand is, you know, it is normal for runners to, you know, go under tents.
My kids were runners. You always do that.
And so there was some conversation that he was told to leave, and he was saying,
well, he had been invited under the tent by a friend.
Yes.
He had been invited. One last thing, I know we're playing the music, but Austin Metcalf's the victim, the deceased. His father went on a podcast, and listen to it for yourself, but he called Carmelo Anthony a racial slur, and he also said that the reason that black people weren't on the jury is because black people are unable to hold bias from the trial because they don't know their own fathers, have a bunch of baby mamas running around living off of government assistance. So that is that's the thinking of the victim's father.
Well, let's not say that was the victim's thinking as well.
Of the victim.
But
of the
Yeah, I'm glad that Whoopi Goldberg actually said that. The View sometimes can be hit or miss with certain things and just a little bit overly biased in certain things too. Once again, I'm glad she actually said that because we don't know if that was the viewpoint of Austin Metcalf. To what one of the hosts said about Austin Metcalf's father, those things are actually true. I've actually heard him say that. He was pretty mad when he said all those things. Not going to excuse it. I'll just add this in there. Before any of that, if any of you have actually been following the case, heard about it, I'm sure there's been a lot of things on social media via TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. Outside of the courthouse, there were people waiting for Austin Metcalf's family to come outside and said, and I quote, "We're glad Austin's dead." Going absolutely monster mode on the family. That was only some. There were things that they were already sent, whether we're talking about death threats, whether we're talking about social media messages. People have gone crazy and said nut stuff to that family. I'm not going to say fight fire with fire, okay, in this situation, because no one's really going to win. But this man is ultimately emotionally destroyed. His son died. He's been getting crazy threats. He's going to crash out a little bit. And honestly, for both sides, whether we're talking about Austin Metcalf or Carmelo Anthony, one son is gone forever, and the other one is going to be gone for a very long time. Two futures torn apart. Let me know what you guys think in the comments, all right? This one's a tough one. Later.